What's up, collectors? DK here with Collector's Impact, and today we are going to cover some more MetaZoo lore. In today's video, we're going to go ahead and talk about Babe the Blue Ox, as that is quite a fan favorite, as well as the Salamander Queen and the Giant Salamanders, as they are kind of one and the same, and I'll explain when that comes up. This is video 3 so far in the lore series. If you're interested in seeing the first 2 videos, I'll go ahead and put a link in the description for that. We covered such things as the Bigfoot, Chupacabra, the Loveland Frogman, and many other popular ones in those videos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Babe the Blue Ox. So the story of Babe the Blue Ox is not so much a cryptid monster story as it is an actual American folklore story. So the story around Blue is heavily involved with the story around Paul Bunyan. So let's go ahead and explore this great American folklore. In 19th century America, lumberjacks were one of the most plentiful, readily available, and important jobs in the country. And this was due to the westward expansion of the American frontier, with everybody trying to go out west for the gold rush, as well as just develop the rest of the nation. It was extremely important to clear forests and paths and to start building infrastructure from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. So because of that, there were a lot of lumberjacks, and being a lumberjack is actually not an easy ordeal at all. It's very, very dangerous. You're wielding axes all day and saws and having to lift lumber, and it's just a ton of manual labor with a lot of potential for risks. So at night, when all of the work was done and the boys were gathered around the fire, they would often tell folklore tales to each other. And in the mid-19th century, Paul Bunyan became one of the characters that was most focused on by the lumberjacks. He's basically like the folklore deity for the lumberjacks. The story goes that he was delivered to his parents by 5 storks because he was so large that one just wouldn't cut it. It took 5 to carry him. Soon after his arrival to his parents in northeastern Maine, he started growing so big, so fast, that they just couldn't keep up with it for the most part. He was eating them out of house and home. He would eat barrels and barrels of porridge at a time, drink a whole cow's worth of milk every day, kind of a situation. His father built him a massively oversized crib, and when he would roll around in the crib as a baby, it would cause earthquakes in the neighboring town. So then they built him a raft bed so that he could sleep out on the water. But when he would roll around in the water, it would cause tsunamis. So the local townspeople and the officials forced the family to leave. They had no choice but to venture out into the wilderness and the forests of Maine. And it was there that Paul Bunyan was raised, deep in the woods. So as he was growing up and getting bigger, he was developing his passion for lumberjacking and getting really into that. But there was one really, really cold winter that came by when he was in his youth. And it was during this winter that they said that it was so cold that the words that were coming out of people's mouths would freeze solid and make it so that the noise couldn't even make it to the person's ears that you were trying to converse with. That's how cold the air was. It was so cold that the snow itself was freezing and turned blue. So one day, when the ground was covered with snow, Paul Bunyan went out and he was exploring around in the woods, and in a field he saw a little blue ox jumping about, frolicking, completely unbothered by the cold weather. Paul took the ox home to his house deep in the woods there, and he raised the little ox as his own. He named him, of course, Babe the Blue Ox. And it was said that when Paul Bunyan cared for an animal, it would grow to be proportional to his size. So as Paul Bunyan continued to grow up, so did Babe right alongside him. And it ended up that Paul Bunyan, as a full-grown adult, was the equivalent of 190 feet tall, and Blue, proportionally like an ox, was right there next to him at like 170 feet tall. And it was at that point that they set out on their great adventure, going from the east coast of Maine all the way through the entire United States and clearing forests, making a path all the way to the west coast of the U.S. So it was said that with one single swing of his axe, Paul Bunyan could clear out an entire acre's worth of forest. So a lot of the folklore and legends are around how Paul and Babe the Blue Ox worked as a team to clear out so many forests and to develop areas of nature into what they needed them to be for when they were there. For example, Lake Michigan was apparently dug as a watering hole for Blue, and the Mississippi River was formed when Blue was carrying a big pail of water on his back, but he slipped and fell and the water spilled and it created the Mississippi River. Also, Paul Bunyan's axe dragging across the ground in Arizona is allegedly what made the Grand Canyon. In some of the stories of Paul and Babe the Blue Ox, there is actually a mate for Babe, and the mate's name is Bessie. She's a yellow cow that Paul Bunyan raised, and Bessie grew to be pretty much just as big as Blue, and that was his little girlfriend there, and also essentially their cheerleader as they went on their adventures. She would sing their praises in the distance as they worked the day away. Blue would carry all of the chopped down lumber and whatnot, and of course Paul himself would be chopping away all day long. Once they had made it all the way across the United States and completed their work and everything, Babe the Blue Ox did indeed pass away, and it's said that his burial mound is what is nowadays known as the Black Hills of South Dakota. With Babe out of the picture and all of the work completed, Paul Bunyan set off for retirement in Alaska, and it's alleged that the aurora borealis is the shimmer and gleam of his axe as the light hits it in the distance. Of course, this is all fictional. It is definitely a folklore story. I am not claiming that any of these are supposed to be real, but that is the origin of Babe the Blue Ox. All right, and the second story for today is about the Salamander Queen and the giant salamanders here worshiping the queen. They're really one and the same in the sense that the Salamander Queen is just the largest of the giant salamanders. So it's about the lore of the giant salamander. So the giant salamander allegedly originates in the Trinity Alps in Northern California. It was first sighted in the 19th century, and then there were a lot of subsequent sightings for the majority of the 20th century, and we'll go over some of the most famous ones. It's pretty important to note that of the reported incidents, it's actually not necessarily out of the realm of possibility, because the salamanders are reported to be around 5 feet long, in some cases up to 9 feet, and there are actually salamanders out there in the world that are that large. But in terms of the region of Northern California where these encounters are reported, there's no physical evidence or record of a giant salamander like that, and therefore it is classified as a cryptid monster still. The first notable report of the giant salamander was in 1920 by Frank L. Griffith. He was a deer hunter in the area there in California, and he reported seeing 5 giant salamanders, ranging from 5 foot long to 9 feet long, in the Trinity Alps' New River. So the 9 foot long one is going to go ahead and be the Salamander Queen, as that is the leader and ruler of the other giant salamanders. Then in 1939, Thomas L. Rogers, a man who was out in the area, supposedly had the opportunity to actually study one of the giant salamanders that he claims was caught in the Sacramento River. But unfortunately, though he did study it and document it and everything, he didn't keep it, and there's no record of the actual salamander existing, as mentioned before. So if he did have one, he actually either let it go or he's just making it up. Then in the 1950s, a man named Vern Hardin of Pioneer, California, claimed to have seen 12 giant salamanders in the remote Hubbard Lake. So he upped the other guy by more than double. He didn't just see 5, he saw 12, ranging from 5 to 9 feet long. In the 1960s, all of these stories for the last few decades in the 20th century had gotten the attention of the famous Yeti hunter Tom Slick. And Tom Slick went ahead and set out on an actual quest to find, document, and potentially capture a giant salamander to put the mystery to rest once and for all. Unfortunately, though, after plenty of time searching, he was unable to find one. From that point on, the stories had died down quite a lot until the year 1997, when a writer named Kyle Mizukami went to the region in search of the legendary giant salamander for himself. And just like Tom Slick, after many efforts in trying to find one, he went home empty-handed as well. And really, since then, there hasn't been too much activity in the Trinity Alps in California. However, in the year 2007, the largest recorded salamander on record in the world was officially documented by scientists in China on a farm, and I'm going to butcher this, in Shangjiaji, China, coming in at 180 centimeters long, which is equivalent to 5.9 feet, and 59 kilograms, which is 130 pounds. That was the largest known salamander to ever be recorded, and that was in the year 2007, so not even 20 years ago, which does give a little bit of validity to the potential for there being a giant salamander or salamanders in California. I mean, there just may be a small number of them, but with that discovery being made so recently like that, it is very possible that there could be giant salamanders in California as well, whether they're related or unrelated to the Asian variety. Well, that wraps up the video for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed these two stories of Babe the Blue Ox and the Salamander Queen and giant salamander servants there. If you did, please do remember to give it a nice thumbs up, as it does greatly help with the channel and the algorithms and everything. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, as well as actual discussions on cards and collecting and grading and all of that kind of stuff, definitely subscribe to the Collector's Impact. Thank you very much again for coming by, and I